Well, I have some domains for that.
So great little fun that we have with them. In fact, if you look at today's statistics for Firefox extensions, almost 2 billion Firefox extensions have been downloaded as of today, just barely shy of that. And you look at current Firefox extensions currently being used, Firefox, or I should say Mozilla Foundation estimates that there's about 150 million extensions currently in use today. So it's a bit
and that's just on Kevin's browser.
Well, aren't they all mine?
That's what I meant.
So what can we do with this? This is great functionality, great feature sets. Well, we have several different vulnerabilities that we can exploit. Vulnerabilities that we use normally to attack client-side web pages like cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery. We have beef plugins, beef hooks, be able to snag somebody's browsers.
Thank you, Wade.
Yes, definitely call out for Wade. But all these vulnerabilities usually require us to, number one, get it on somebody's website where we can get that user to snag that content. Number two, get that page to stay persistent in their browser. Well, Firefox extension, we don't have that issue anymore. That extension is permanently running 100% of the time in your browser. So, great feature. We can provide all sorts of very, very interesting content to you, content that is very, very visible to you, and all sorts of content that is visible to me.
That's not bad, is it?
No, not at all.
How many people here have a Mifi device?
Wait, just 1 second. By the way, the zombifying my browser code takes 1 line of code added to the extension, right? That's malicious. Not as malicious as no script, but.
Oh yes, and if you want to be able to do a penetration test and have a persistent hook into somebody's browser, you also can gain access to their client machine, go into one of their currently running extensions, make a slight little tweak of your own, get back out, and they're never the wiser.
Modularity and extensibility, thing of beauty, isn't it?
Yes.
But back to my question, how many of you have a Mifi device? I know I do.
One of these beautiful little things.
Anyone else?
This is the Verizon version. The Sprint version is silver.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
And I gave it back to you last night.
Last night.
Okay, so Mifi. We've heard several different vulnerabilities over the last few weeks affecting this Mifi device. So here's a brief little history over the last month. Early in January, it was discovered that the web administration page for your Mifi devices have several different vulnerabilities. How many of you guys saw this? It was tweeted out, it's a couple pages.
Baldwin
so
Brothers
not
for the
many
win.
of you.
Yeah, I had no idea the Baldwin brothers were security researchers, but hey.
Okay, so pretty severe cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, and the fun one, authentication bypass. They will check to see if you're logged in on all of 3 of the many pages that is available.
Oh, and Verizon knows about this, and they are working on that.
Yes, it is actively being.
And I talked to them specifically on Friday, and they said, don't worry, you have to be within 15 feet of the device to pull it off.
So,
how close are you guys to me?
okay, then it was discovered that one of the pages that is susceptible to the the authentication bypass was the configuration file. So all you have to simply do is request the configuration file from the browser without logging in, and it will very gladly give that page to you. Not only that, if you want, you can actually send it back up to the client, and it will automatically take that in, run whatever you tell it to do. Wait a minute.
Glad that wasn't mine.
That's okay. Good thing I have copies of all your configs anyway. So, and then last week, Joshua Wright, one of our fellow coworkers,
Yay, Josh.
gave us an article discussing about some of the weaknesses in the way that Verizon, in particular, had set up the default SSIDs and the default passwords for those SSIDs. And we have Hikari from Pico was kind enough to run some, or is in the process of running a couple hash dictionaries for us. And it's going to take him about 37 hours, is all, to calculate every single possible default SSID and default password for Mifi devices.
Thanks, Hikari. He rocks. Yeah,
Yes.
Pico.
Rocks hard.
Good stuff, man. Yep. And rocks fast.
Okay, and as of today, we build upon this. Okay, so first thing I did when I got my Mifi device, jumped into it, looked in the configuration file, saw, okay, this is kind of limited on what I can do. That's not really cool at all.
And you left it by default, right? Because that's what we all do.
Oh, yeah. No, of course not.
How many of those that actually have a Mifi device actually left it in default mode? Oh, none of you?
Raise your hand, Tom.
You're
Raise your hand,
screwed.
Tom. Okay, so I went through and I found on one of the pages a very, very odd setting that was one of the default settings. So if you look up here on the port forwarding page, they have HTTP port forwarded over to Never Never Land. This is an IP address that
Michael
is a valid
Jackson's
IP
dead.
address in the WLAN in your wireless network. However, it's something that's not populated or an IP address that will never be issued out. And what did I do as a security professional? I disabled it. Okay? Why allow traffic from the internet to go through my device out into Never Never Land? Because that's just stupid. It's wasteful.
Security for the fail.
I know. And then another thing that I did is I also went through and changed my default IP address range for my wireless network. Okay, 198 or 192.168.1.1 is just something that I find a little too common. I didn't like it. I quite often will do multiple route tables through multiple interfaces when I'm doing penetration tests, and I didn't like that
I always use
setting.
the 6.6.6 network.
No, actually 10.6.6.6 if anybody's interested in jumping on.
Well,
So-
the
so you're-
6.6.6 network is owned by Milnet, so it's much more evil.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Had a
So
secret
you're more secure.
Oh, I'm much more secure.
Yeah.
I secured my Mifi device. I made sure that nobody could get into my Mifi device.
Fail.
Guess what? If
Fail.
you remove that setting, you are now susceptible to authentication bypass from the freaking internet.
Yeah. The freaking internet.
I've seen that site.
Dude, I run that site.
You
So,
sent me the link.
this web admin page, by default, runs on all interfaces, including your cellular interface, which runs on a public IP address, which is accessible from the internet. So if you remove these settings, anybody that happens to get out there and scan for it will find your device, find the configuration, and will have the option to upload their own configuration to your Mifi device.
Well, what's in the configuration file for these things?
Oh, there's absolutely nothing in the configuration file for these things other than the password to control the device, the SSID for your wireless network, the PSK for your wireless device, and all sorts of other interesting settings that if you accidentally put in other information, the device fails to function anymore.
Nice.
That's a cool password.
It's a really cool password. It's kind of a fun password, huh? You know
Wha-
what?
wha- wha-
I have
why-
never found any password cracker ever figure out my passwords. Never.
That's awesome.
By the way, that is your device, Kevin.
Damn.
It's not my device. And yes, that is my password on your device.
Nice.
I hate when he does that.
So what do attackers do with this? Of course, they would simply scan the internet trying to find these devices. If you look at Verizon, Verizon has about 4 million IP addresses dynamically assigned to your Mifi devices when they connect up to the internet.
Or 8 million if you trust Nmap's output.
Yes, so when you scan a whole bunch and you force Nmap to do a whole bunch in parallel, it tends to have some interesting output every now and again. But
if you had scanned.
if you had
Right,
scans,
right.
of course, only if you had scans, and if you had those scans, and if you wrote an NSC script that automatically extracted this data out, you know,
you were gonna release it to
theoretically
everybody
it
at the
should only
conference.
take about 2 days to scan all 4 million IP addresses and find interesting data.
Hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically speaking, of course.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Enough.
And there's an issue out there. There is a problem.
Jennifer
there are
Granick in the
people
crowd?
that are vulnerable. So fix your devices. It's luckily not too bad. Apparently, there's a whole bunch of people that by default don't bother ever changing these values. There's a whole bunch of more people that do change these default values to disable that port forwarding because it's a security flaw, and fail to change their default admin password.
Yeah, that was quality.
Admin, ADMIN. Only about 40% of all devices found hadn't changed their default password, and 60% of all devices hadn't changed their default PSK and SSID.
Hypothetically found, right? Your,
Hypothet-
your
yeah,
friend was doing
my
it.
friend was
right,
doing
yeah,
it.
yeah, maybe.
Well, actually, we had 2 friends that also followed in suit. How many of you found Tom? Oh, never mind.
Okay, so solution. We rejoin the asylum. We enter in, we accept the craziness, and we port forward HTTP back to Never Never Land. When you do this, make sure that you use a valid IP address inside the wireless IP address range that your Mifi device has. So if you change it from the 192.168.1.0 network, make sure you put in a valid IP address on whatever network you assign to your device. If you put something else in there, it will look like it's port forwarding, but it really doesn't.
Quality.
Okay. Other little pieces of advice that we should also mention. If you do this port forwarding, realize that this is only a fix from the internet. Okay, people that you allow onto your Mifi device still have full access to all these vulnerabilities. They can still have full control